Nerd on the Podcast is proudly partnered with Apogee Electronics and Odyssey Headphones, leaders in the field of audio.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Liefeld, creator of Deadpool, Cable, X-Force, all of it. And you are listening to Nerd On.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Nerd On the Podcast you didn't need, but you deserve, and where all levels of nerd are welcome. We have a very special episode today, so we're going to get right into it. I am Josh.
And I am Tom.
And this episode is brought to you in part by the members of the Nerd On Nation that is powered by Patreon. As a member of the Nerd On Nation, you do get fun perks like early access to episodes, you get bonus episodes, you get discounts on merch, you get private servers on the Discord server. It's a good time. Check that out. nerdon.io/Patreon, and check out that Discord, nerdon.io/Discord. And of course, a huge shout out to our partners, Apogee, who provided us with these microphones, the Hype Mic, the ultimate podcasting microphone, and Boom. Odyssey headphones. These, as we have said, if your ears were mouths, they would taste like butter. They are fantastic, so I do suggest checking them out. That is Odyssey headphones, AUDEZE, Odyssey. But today we have a very special guest for this very special bonus episode. He is best known as the creator of everyone's favorite Merc with a Mouth, Marvel's Deadpool. His 30-plus career spans work on many of the industry's top-tier comic franchises from both DC and Marvel, including the X-Men, Captain America, the Avengers, Spider-Man, X-Force. Man, the list just keeps going. And he has a brand new G.I. Joe spin-off series called Snake Eyes: DEADGAME that is out July 15th. And if that isn't enough, he has his own podcast, I can use my words today, called Robservations, in which he gives insight into comics history from his personal point of view and his personal memories. Our guest today is none other than Rob Liefeld. Rob, welcome to Nerd On the Podcast.
Rob, thank you so much for spending some time with us to talk. I know you've probably been doing a lot, especially in these recent days and months coming up to, July 15th, with the launch of Snake Eyes. So how have you been, what you've been up to? How have you been handling with all the pandemic and shutdowns, and how you been keeping yourself busy?
Well, I have 3 teenagers, 16, 18, and 20. I don't wish that on anybody in a pandemic, okay? No, they're great kids. They're my wife and I have really enjoyed. Unfortunately, we tell them all the time that they've been trapped with us because normally they're out and about doing their thing. But otherwise, look, I've seen the memes. I've seen the comic community pass around like, oh, now you guys know. Now the whole world knows what it's like to be a comic book creator working in isolation. And look, I kind of really did what I do. I'm very much a hermit, and I don't go out much at all. So the quarantine, while we took it very seriously, we take it very seriously, but I remember March 14th, I told my kids we're in, I predicted everything's going to get shut down. And by the next Tuesday, everything did, because you could kind of read the tea leaves and everything that was going on. And like I said, my family's been great. I was able to get a ton of work done. There were times I was definitely concerned about what was going on in society at large, but my therapy came in the form of drawing comics, drawing sketches. I started a podcast like yourself because I was lonely and I needed someone to talk to. So I decided to talk to myself. But so that's the long and the short of it in how I coped and continue to cope.
Has this pandemic, with all that in mind, has it provided new challenges for producing a podcast not a podcast, but a comic book during this time?
Well, I was honestly wondering, so during the pandemic, here's what I know. All of my comic stores that acted really quickly to get online, they did very well. Two of my stores actually had to hire more staff to fulfill all the mail order the business that they drummed up online, because what happened, I believe, this is my take, we all went into lockdown. There was a fear component and kind of an uncertainty, and people turned like they've never turned before into childhood desires or things from their past. They
Comforts,
indulged.
yeah.
And I think that people not able to get comic books for 2.5 months, almost 3 months, started buying favorites from their youth. My website started to explode. It was weird, but the reason I'm telling you that is I made some new covers for existing comics, and my printer, who is in Arizona, was able to print the books, send them to me. I was able to send them out to my, audience that was participating in them. And what I really found was the comics community rallied around. And as long as people can print, and I'll be honest, and as long as, I think the post office has been overloaded these last 3 months. I know I would switch off and take a day of shipping just to relieve my family, who all pitched in to help with the load.
Yeah.
And I would see the lines grow as people, were mailing so much more. And and look, the community wants their comic books. So as far as me, I create them in the same office that I'm always in every day. And I've always drawn mostly on a lap board. And I have like, you'll see, and I can actually just quote my son, my 20-year-old goes, "What's it like, Dad, to never grow up? You eat junk food, you play with toys, and you draw comic books on a beanbag." And I have 2 beanbags that I sit in, and I have my lap board, and I was drawing G.I. Joe issue 3 earlier before I jumped on with you guys. Snake Eyes issue 3. And also IDW called me up and said, "Rob, we want you to continue making Snake Eyes." I was anticipating maybe a turn down of the project during the time, because there was a lot of uncertainty. The distributor, as the well-read audience members that you have know, that the distribution pipeline was challenged. Retailers weren't able to let customers in. So it was, I think, the biggest challenge the industry's faced since I've been around. But, creators got to create, right? And as long as printers can print, we're coming at you. And here's my last thing. Comic books are cheap entertainment. People are finding out, I can't spend $12 to go see a movie right now and get coughed on and get sick, thank God. But I can pour myself into these comic books, which is, as you can see, I have a spinner rack right here.
Yeah, you do.
Behind me, and it is my brilliant, and it carries everything that I loved as a kid. So that's where my interests are. And so while the pandemic was not fun and is not fun by any means, there's been comic books are a great coping mechanism for me, and hopefully for comic book fans.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I've been listening to the podcast and, talking a little bit about Robservations. A lot of people actually are starting to do the podcast, making podcasts, and, a lot of different creators tend to, either branch out and all that stuff. What inspired you to share about your upbringing, and then also bringing in guests from your personal perspective?
Well, it was a big leap in regards to, like, would anyone give a crap about this? But it really was born out of isolation and loneliness. That is the one thing, because I have about 3 really good friends and we talk all the time, except when the pandemic hit, we ran into things to talk about. It's when you're not going out and you're all in every day, and you're not all, there's no new movies to see. The same stuff's on Netflix that was on earlier, and you burn through it in a day. And, all of the top talking points kind of faded. So I'm like, man, I should just talk to myself. And so my son told me, he's very technically proficient, and said, "Dad, I can hook you up. I know what you need. I'm going to get you this mic."
Nice.
He ordered it for me. He said, "Just pay me back, Dad." I'm like, "Here's the money." And I started doing it, and we were able to get it carried. And look, it's a different Robservations with Rob Liefeld is my personal journey with comics. I know a lot of stories. I know where a lot of the bodies are buried. I haven't even gotten to myself. I've hearkened a couple times to my own professional experiences, but I have not worked up to where I am in the industry yet, because then once you get there, that's 34 years of up close and personal, interaction with this industry that I have participated in, and parts of the industry I helped build. And so as long as people are listening, hopefully they're entertained. The great thing is that I think my nephew is a real comic book fan, and he turned 18 recently. And of the last 5 years, I mean, he's not just a comic book like movie fan. He's participated in the comic books, and
he's a consumer.
Store. Yeah, he
not a collector.
That's correct. And I have given him omnibuses of the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Spider-Man, the Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Fantastic Four run, like the old stuff, kind of years ago, to see if this is a real, point of interest. And it was. And that generation doesn't know a lot about comics history, because what people have been telling me, people keep asking me if I'm going to have guests on, and guests are not going to come on for a long time. I have kind of a co-pilot I bring on occasionally named Jimmy J, because he is one of my friends that we have great talks about comics with. And I need the help, because as much as I can talk for 75 minutes straight, it's nice to get a breather in and have a co-pilot, as
definitely.
You guys have experienced yourself. So the thing is, but interviewing guests is not something I really feel like I'm up to yet, because
Same.
I just want to talk comics and share, I mean, again, the diversity episode was always coming when it was coming. And then it landed in this time where we were just going crazy as a nation and being ripped apart, and obviously a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. But the little Robbie Liefeld in Anaheim, California wanted to be Luke Cage in the worst possible way. I wanted that tiara. I wanted that yellow shirt. I would walk around. He was one of my most exciting. I always liked the Rebels. I went back recently and examined. My first love was Namor the Submariner.
Nice.
I mean, the guy has a hot temper. He's angry at everybody.
Try and take Susan Storm.
Yeah, that's it. then I was Luke Cage, who was the rebel of Harlem, the protector, but always up against it, and another guy with a bit of a hot temper. In contrast to Captain America and Reed Richards, who are not hot-tempered guys. Those guys didn't interest me as much. Then ironically, prior to Wolverine, it was Hercules, Marvel's Hercules, and he was the spoiled brat, hot-tempered, alternative to
Prince
Thor,
demigod,
who was the nobleman, And then Wolverine, and once Wolverine came, I'm like, I found my guy. He has 6 knives, stabs people, he has a berserker rage. I'm there. So I've always kind of favored the hotheads, but Luke Cage right in the middle of that in the 70s with those characters, because again, I mean, Black Goliath came out in 1975. Black Lightning came out in 1977. Luke Cage, people don't understand. People think, Black Panther was the first black hero given his own book. No, it was Luke Cage. He got his own before DC did it, and then DC follows with Black Lightning, and then right around the same time, they give Black Panther finally his own showcase. Yeah. But I mean, the comic books industry was always at the fore of this, and it should be celebrated. It should be investigated. It should be explored. And that's my point of interest, as this long-winded answer has told you.
No, yeah. Listening to the podcast, it's been wonderful, because to me, my experience has been like, okay, he's going to talk about his experience. He's a professional. So obviously by trade, he's going to have a lot of cool stories. But the way you go about it feels like, and this is in no way like a slight or anything, but it's like this wonderful PBS, like, heartfelt journey through your experience. And I just got finished listening to the Spider-Man and Superman episode, and like hearing your genuine love. I had a very similar experience. My first ever comic book was when Spider-Man and Batman met. And so you had Venom and Carnage. And so like I was in those shoes for a second. I was like, oh yeah. And then I was in this cool dark comic book store. I felt like it was the most metal thing ever. It wasn't quite a liquor store with a spinner rack, but it was a comic book store. And the way you go about it, I love that you also are very cognizant to tell people like, hey, DC, Marvel, they have all these echoes of these characters and the artists, and they are all like swiping from left to right. Yeah. And you can be very honest and say like, hey, but this one, this story is the one that resonated with me more. Like Justice League came first, but then Marvel's version is the one that like everyone came out with. It wasn't the Avengers, but talking about Hyperion was like really, really cool.
Well, I appreciate that. Look, man, like it's where I live and breathe. And the reason it's warm and fuzzy is because I have never lost that inner kid. And those memories are powerful. Look, I'm going to tell you something I haven't said in the podcast yet, but my family knows it. And even my friends used to test me on it. I can tell you what time of day, where, when I bought every single comic book I have ever bought. Awesome. When I'm going through my back issue, and I see an annual that I bought on a road trip with my family on our way to New Mexico, there is a rush. It is that wave of memory that's activated. And one of the it's funny, I won't name his name, but there's a peer who told me several years ago that I was only celebrating my comics of my youth because it was just pure nostalgia and everybody loves what they had as a kid. And I'm like, well, that aside, I believe there's an aspect of that that's true with everyone. But as I've tried to make a point with this podcast is I was fortunate enough, you don't control when you're born.
No.
But Frank Miller, George Perez, John Byrne, Walt Simonson, we're living in their world still. The last X-Men movie was a John Byrne story. The 3 seasons of Netflix Daredevil was a Batman story. I mean, I'm sorry, it was a Daredevil story by Frank Miller. The 300 movies are a product of what Frank started in Daredevil. The Christopher Nolan and the Zack Snyder depictions of Batman are Frank Miller. This guy is as relevant, maybe more so now than he was when I was inhaling his work in 1979, 1980, 1981, when he was taking a bi-monthly book that was almost canceled to Marvel's bestseller. And so that's not nostalgia, you know? And the Walt Simonson version of Thor, we're still waiting for Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill smashed that logo in 1983. And Lost World, I mean Dark World, which is not a great movie, but Malekith and the entire plot is Walt Simonson.
Open it up. Yeah.
I mean, Ragnarok is tons of Walt Simonson, the executioner with machine guns, and they're making my childhood into the films. Now, there's some other stuff that they're picking from, but primarily, and here's the deal. Master of Kung Fu, Shang-Chi was my favorite comic for years. Badass. I would run home and in Southern California, Monday through Friday on the ABC Channel 7 network, before they had talk shows, before Oprah, before Donahue, any of that, the 3 to 5 slot, Monday through Friday, was the afternoon movie. You'd get Monsters, Godzilla all week.
Yeah.
Then you'd get Bruce Lee all week. Okay. You'd get Westerns, you'd get samurai films. Because again, you got to program this 52 weeks a year. And so I had inhaled all of that martial arts, Kung Fu. I mean, look, I grew up with, I forget what the guy's name is. He was the star of Kung Fu. It was a show on.
Dave Carradine, right?
Carradine, thank you. Yes, that's grab the pebble out of my hand.
Yes.
Okay. That culture was all over us. So Shang-Chi comes out, is hugely popular. They then give you Iron Fist. Mm-hmm. And so Marvel was really into that, the martial arts stuff. But what movie's getting made? Shang-Chi. Okay. The Eternals is Jack Kirby's 1977 opus. Yeah. Opus. It's like he learned from the fourth world at DC. Yeah. He's like, I will now give you a new race of gods, space gods. And again, it's almost an echo of his own work at DC, but now through this newfangled lens, which is more alien focused. But long story short, when did those come out? My childhood. Okay. So that's not nostalgia. That's homework. Okay. That's like research.
Yeah.
And it's applicable right now. So it just happened to be right time, right place, and people are responding to it. Robservations with Rob Liefeld, iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, look it up.
Everywhere.
It's therapy. It's my therapy.
No, it's great. And I really like what you talked about, how, like, you know, echoes and the source material is like, you know, you made the example of Just the Two of Us. Mm-hmm. And how, like, you know, with music, a lot of people don't say, oh, that is a stolen thing. There's a little bit more of a camaraderie with it. And now with the movies coming out, and you're talking about like how a lot of people don't know a lot of the comic book history of things like the research. Do you think that there's ever going to be a slippery slope of leaning too much into the source material or drifting too far away from it?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. You know, I'm not really sure. Look, I think Batman and Spider-Man have had the most exploitation in the culture, from Frank Miller to Bruce Timm to Michael Keaton, Tim Burton, Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder. Now you've got Matt Reeves. Everyone's telling different stories, but it's still a cape and a cowl, and he's Bruce Wayne. And, you know, Spider-Man, here's the thing I love to say. And, you know, Kevin Feige is a genius. That's, you know, we all bow, you're a genius. But you're not the only genius, Kevin Feige. Lord and Miller, and I forget the director of Into the Spider-Verse. But
Chris Miller and Phil Lord. Yeah.
No. That's Lord and Miller, but they produced it. But there's a director whose name I'm forgetting. And look, That won an Oscar. That's the Marvel movie that has an Oscar on the mantle. And Kevin Feige had nothing to do with that movie. Okay. That is a product of Sony, not Disney, Marvel, and Lord and Miller, and the brilliant talents at Sony. There are other geniuses that are able to bring you these. And I think they kicked down the door to the multiverse. And now I'm not sure you could introduce the multiverse in the same way. And I know Doctor Strange talked about the multiverse and the Ancient One, but seeing and going on a 2-hour adventure with multiverse characters, the way we did in Into the Spider-Verse, I feel like has kicked down the door and prepared everybody for what's to come in live action. And because I think you're going to see, I mean, when we're reading that Michael Keaton may be in a Flash film, now you're going, oh, so there's, maybe Tobey Maguire is going to be in Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange. Okay. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think you
can explore, you can have the imagination.
So versions and interpretations, look, I'll be honest. Batman Begins is my favorite Batman story, and I can't source it. When I watched it, I was like, we went opening night, my wife and I. Batman never trained under Ra's al Ghul before in some monastery up in the Himalayas. That is true to Christopher Nolan, right? That is 100%. I was like, wow, he is taking his origin in a different, Bruce Wayne going away and learning stuff. Yeah, that happened. But under the direct tutelage of this man who really is Ra's al Ghul, who is this ancient myth that is, and this cult that has brought civilizations down. I was riveted by his speeches and his reveal. And look, man, hats off to Chris Nolan. He made my favorite Batman product, and it is his own interpretation. The later ones would have more echoes of comic book source material, but you can't source Batman Begins. It doesn't exist. He was super fresh, and I'm same with Deadpool. The first Deadpool movie is an original story that humiliated everyone, including myself, who've ever done Deadpool. It was done way better, having created Vanessa and Wade, but never making them connect in the way that they did in that first 20 minutes. That's why people loved Deadpool, the movie, the first one, so much. Morena and Ryan, that chemistry.
Phenomenal.
If you don't care about them, you don't care about the journey. Now, everything else is familiar, but you know what else they did that was way better than me or anyone that followed? The suit is red because you don't see him bleed. Hello. And I've told Rhett and Paul, like, bow. Like, oh, you guys, this is genius stuff. Like, they went and took the material to a better place than it had ever been. And look, that's because they were able to collect all of it. Our blood, sweat, and tears. They collected it.
Take a risk.
Said, we can kind of exercise some certain concepts from this and take them in a better place. Now, Deadpool 2 was much more comic booky and had much more reflections and echoes of the comics. But that first movie, man, I remember reading it going, this is the best Deadpool I've ever encountered ever. And when people say, well, who's your favorite Deadpool writer? I'm like, Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, and Ryan Reynolds. And let's argue about that because I'll win.
From you, it's yourself. So,
they don't exist without me, and I'm giving them the crown. Okay. It's that simple. So, but yeah, like I said, and it's fun. And look, on my shelf right here, I have a 60 statues, action figures.
Yeah. We were Googling at them before you got on.
And they are all a different interpretation. There's not, Cable has a different face in every one of them. Some of Deadpool's faces are more angular. Some are more angry. Some look goofy. Everybody does their own thing, right? And we enjoy them. Now, do I like some more than others? I do, of course. But I won't, diminish the ones I don't like by going, this sucks.
Can't condemn it.
I'm glad it exists. Even the ones I don't like much, I'm so happy they exist. Yeah. So,
turning it back to comic books, specifically, you raised over $75,000 for local comic book stores during this time, so they wouldn't close. I think is really awesome, and it shows the community, the community, but also the sacredness of the comic book creators that we know and love, who've developed everything that kids are growing up now and adults are loving and paying dollar over dollar for. Come back to the community and come back to the comic book stores. But we're also here to talk about your new comic book coming out. And Josh got some questions for you.
I do. So of course we got the the press release, but I want to ask you some stuff that wasn't in that. Like having read the comic, the first issue a few times, what inspired this new story for you? Because I know that you are a fan of G.I. Joe. What inspired this for you? Like, why now?
Okay, so IDW called me up a year ago when Major X was coming out. The first issue hit. And Chris Ryle, who's the publisher of IDW and a good buddy of mine, texted me that afternoon and said, Rob, Chris, hey, dude, is it time? Should we do G.I. Joe now? Are you able to slot this in? And G.I. Joe has always been a passion of mine. IDW had me do a few covers of G.I. Joe over the years, but that was all I interacted with them. And honestly, I thought that's all I'm going to interact. I felt like that was the level of my bucket list interaction because, here I've got my so in 1974, I bought this guy right here. The G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip.
Nice.
And again, it says right there, Kung Fu grip. I mean, that's how they marketed him. And here is my main man with the real hair stitched in. It's so creepy, but he's awesome. And this was my first love. G.I. Joe is my 100% my first love. This was the Sandbox action figure. Really, my dad called it a doll. Are you playing with dolls now? Yes, I am, Dad. And my dad loved me. He always encouraged me, but I think he was like, they're making dolls for boys. I'm like, they sure are. And
hell yeah, they are.
And no, I loved it. And look, whoever, I think obviously it was an industry-wide problem, which is why they started making action figures and they shrunk them down, right? So, but I bridge this, these two, because this is 1974. I'm 7 years old. This is what was on the market. He was an adventure team hero, no longer associated with the military because they pulled away because of the Vietnam War. They made him an adventure hero and gave him kind of more superhero friends and aliens to battle. And that was my focus. I loved G.I. Joe. I dug him. I was obsessed with him. He traveled everywhere with me. Then one day he wasn't on the shelves anymore. I was too young to understand, like they discontinued that line for the time. But then in 82, 83, I call it the Reagan era rebirth, the real American hero. And which is where we get, I know this is a modern version of the original Snake Eyes, but I have the goggles Snake Eyes behind me.
Nice.
But the thing is that I was there when that stormed the comic book shelves too, and the cartoons and the commercials for comics. And it was a really exciting time. And seeing that G.I. Joe #1 with them all jumping out and the tank, and was just like, whoa, this is this new level of G.I. Joe. Because the thing is, this guy didn't get a comic book.
No.
There was no cartoons, no movies, no comic books. What they did is, for the adventure team, there was one-page ads drawn by John Romita Sr. that Hasbro bought in Marvel Comics, in the comics of my youth. And it was promoting the Kung Fu grip, the Eagle Eye, some new characters that he was interacting with. And so when I got the chance to do G.I. Joe, I was going to do it all in one. And that is why I'm mashing up my love of Snake Eyes, who is the first guy I ever saw wield a machine gun and a katana, pistol and a katana, not a ninja, not a soldier, but both.
Yes.
Okay,
both.
So pretty badass. And again, I tell people, this is the first time I ever saw this. And that's why eventually, you got this because you don't get this unless he does it first. Okay. And now, obviously, I wasn't bold enough to go mute, and I didn't need a mute. I needed a smartass who would play off of Cable's straight man tough guy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. G.I. Joe presented a great challenge to me when they called and asked me if I could do it. I feel like it needed a shot in the arm. I went to the comic store to get some G.I. Joe comics, and nobody had any. And I was really pissed off because I couldn't believe that. I wasn't mad at the stores. They're protecting themselves. They said, we don't carry G.I. Joe for the shelves. If we want, we can subscribe it for you. You can put it on your subscription. But after Chris called me, I went to the stores to research where it was at right now. I kind of have followed it, from arm's length in recent years, but I wasn't up on every G.I. Joe storyline. And so they didn't have this on the shelves in Anaheim, in Orange, in Tustin. And it did not discourage me. It emboldened me. It pissed my childhood off.
Purpose to bring G.I. Joe to the world.
My 7-year-old self was pissed at the idea that, what do you mean? I mean, I can count. I know how to do the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G. What's missing from here? There's nothing in the G section. You have Green Lantern. Where's G.I. Joe? We don't carry it, Mr. Liefeld, but we can carry it on on a request basis. And look, that's how tight the margins are for comic stores, right?
Yeah.
And I talked to 2 stores yesterday. Right now, as well as a lot of them have done selling online, they still are trying to protect their backside and they don't want to be carrying unsold. Because again, I live in California and we are dancing with a complete shutdown again. And that means curbside pickup and a complete retrenchment in what everyone thought they were leaving behind in May. So we're always thinking about that. But if I'm going to do G.I. Joe, I'm going to mash it up. I'm going to bring my 74 love, merge it with my 1982, 83 love. And the main thing is he needed a great villain. And I pitched to Hasbro this ancient evil that had no ties to Cobra and no ties to G.I. Joe, but would get on both of their radars immediately and would pose a great threat to Snake Eyes and the Joes. And you know what? IDW and Hasbro have been behind me 100%.
That's awesome.
Thrilled. They gave me the green light. I have not made any story alterations as yet. And it's just been a blast. And
that's awesome.
So I also want to kind of approach this really quick. When I took over Captain America in 1996, as I was drawing the first issue, I was on the phone with another huge talent in the comics industry named Dan Jurgens, who of Superman and Death of Superman fame. He had just finished doing a Marvel DC crossover, Marvel versus DC, the intercompany crossover. He was one of the primary artists. And we were talking about some work he was going to do for me. And he said, "Hey, Rob, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm drawing Captain America." And Dan said, "Rob, isn't it so special drawing him? I mean, when I was drawing him, you get like this inspiration as you're drawing him. He's that special of a character." And I said, "Yeah, I get that." And the reason I'm telling you that is I got that drawing Snake Eyes. When I was doing finishes on the page, I'm like, this character, like drawing him in action sequences, not just covers, not just pinups, and getting a feel for the character was so exciting. And I felt like it's an honor. And these are iconic characters. And hopefully we
Snake
can,
Eyes such a badass.
He's so ridiculously amazing. And moves cool. There's a way he moves. It's just great. I rewatched a bunch of the cartoons.
Yeah.
Obviously I think I have 20 different Snake Eyes action figures. This is my preference, obviously the newest one. But if I were to back you up to my table right there, 6 of them are behind that chair that you can't see, but they're up against the wall on my table. But it's just this is the ultimate sandbox, ultimate mashup. And I just got the copies myself, the printed copies this morning, and I could not be more thrilled.
Tantalizing.
Great.
It's awesome. What are you most excited for the fans to see with this new not only bringing G.I. Joe to hopefully a wider audience, but what else? Like, what are you excited for?
Well, we were fortunate that we have achieved a wider audience from 3,000 sales to now over 60,000 sales.
That's awesome.
We got people excited, and hopefully they'll be they'll be picking this up. And I'm excited for them to see the breadth. Again, I may or may not have inserted a friend of mine in the book. And
no spoilers.
And it was exciting to interact, maybe mash up my childhood interest. But I like the bad guy, where the bad guy's going, the mission that it presents against Snake Eyes and what he's going to have to do to kind of thwart. Because the first issue is like a great first act. And I'm set. I think it's a good setup for where we're going. And you're going to get the idea that there is this bad guy that can throttle all of them unless they, thwart the ultimate plans that he has. And if he's been defeated before, he can be defeated again, but it takes great effort and a perfect combination of objects, which are ironically weapons of war, because what our bad guy Kurgan wants to do is summon the Dead Game, which is only achieved through the Sword of the Dead. But the Sword of the Dead has battled against other mythological weapons throughout history, and we're going to keep depicting that in flashbacks as we move towards Snake Eyes' kind of agenda and the Joe's agenda in getting the objects they need to thwart our bad guy and his master plan. It's almost like a G.I. Joe story meets an Indiana Jones story. There's definitely objects and MacGuffins, and we're going to have a lot of fun along the way. And there are more 1974 Adventure Team characters coming. because that excites me. Okay.
That's awesome.
That's
no, it's
awesome.
so metal. I love the flashback or the some of the history stuff that you drop in the first one, and I'm just like, this is so awesome. If I see
Thank
more
you.
of this, it's like it's great.
I don't want to give
you
away
said, like,
things, but there are so many
Yeah.
things that I'm like, that was good.
Yeah, no,
That was
it's so
good.
metal.
I appreciate. Look, I really appreciate that. Look, I wanted to do my childhood a solid. Okay,
That's awesome.
And really, I feel like I have a blood debt to Snake Eyes. Deadpool has told me I have a blood debt to Snake Eyes. So I'm trying to do him up right, and hopefully people show up and they enjoy it. And before I got on with you guys, I was skimming the internet, and there was a reviewer who said, I'm going out of my comfort zone. I have never bought a G.I. Joe comic, but I am taking a leap with Liefeld and put it on the recommend list. And I have on my Instagram comments, on my Facebook, people are telling me this is the first G.I. Joe they're ever buying. And so if you've enjoyed my X-Force work, if you've enjoyed my Deadpool work, you are going to enjoy this. It is in the same, I try and tell people, and this was my concern with Hasbro, I put Snake Eyes in a Rob Liefeld story. I didn't put Rob Liefeld in a G.I. Joe story. Like,
that's awesome.
I tried to switch it up, and it's worked out so far. I'm very excited.
That's awesome.
No.
Okay, so we have one last question. It's very important.
Yes.
Here at Nerd On, we not only like to interview our guests about what they do, but we like to talk to them about something that they're nerdy about. And in your podcast, Robservations, you talk a lot about film. I want to know, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, that's easy. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, period. End of story. Done. I've made all my kids watch it. What people don't, so I showed it to my wife when we were married 25 years ago. And I said, I had the laser disc, and I just ordered it and come in, and I said, Joy, this isn't a cowboy movie. It's the blueprint for every buddy cop film that would follow. 48 Hours, Lethal Weapon, Rush Hour are all based on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid because it is a timeless movie. Their dialogue was not written like Western guys. If you follow even the first 20 minutes of just what Paul Newman is his dialogue, what he's espousing, they're dry back and forth. It is very modern, and you don't get better than Redford and Newman. I mean, these guys, the camera loves them.
Yes,
they are amazing. So that tops my list. It always has. I'll just give you my number 2 because I was there, 9 years old. You're not going to get better than Star Wars, 1977.
Okay.
I said it million. Look, I'm the generation that went and saw it. I saw it every weekend, twice a weekend. By the time summer was over, I had hit 38 screenings. I went with my cousins, my best friends. We went. It was our babysitter. It was parents of the 1977 kids were like, dropped us off at the theater at noon and picked us up at 5 after we saw the movie twice on Saturday. Okay. And the thing is, in that movie, that's back when movies played from June or May to December. I mean, I don't ever remember Star Wars leaving the theater. It just kept, performing. And what I tell people is, we did not. There was no sequels. Like no. I didn't. And when they get those medals, and when Luke finally puts away I hear it right now, use the Force, Luke. And he puts away the sight guide, the locator, and just fires. And when that Death Star blows up, and more importantly, that medal ceremony, and Chewie, and everyone, that is electric. Perfect. And it's a perfect film. It never needed anything more. You could destroy all the sequels, and Star Wars is a perfect film
standalone
about a boy that has a dream and
the
fulfills
hero's
it.
Journey.
That's it. And like, I love, obviously, I love that they've gone beyond it, but it wasn't needed. And my generation didn't go to it thinking it was the first part of a multi-arc story, right? So Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid, I watched it as a kid on the Sunday night movie, again, ABC Channel 7. We would get home from church, and twice a year they were playing Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and in the commercial it would show them jumping from the rock into the I can't swim. Like, that was how it was marketed. We'd go over to a friend's house after church and with another family, and we'd all gather around the TV. I'm making this sound like campfire stories, like I came from like Little House on the Prairie. But we'd watch Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So obviously I didn't see it in the theater, but in the recent years, the theaters around us, have put it out as a retro screening.
That's awesome.
And so I have my family saw it on the big screen, and What a movie. Anyway.
That's awesome. Well, Rob, thank you so much for spending time with us. Again, audience at home, check out Rob's podcast, Robservations. It's on Apple Podcast. Check it out. And definitely check out Snake Eyes Dead Game. Can't recommend it enough. But yeah, thank you so much, Rob.
Support a comic book store.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you guys. Hey, yeah, let's support comics, buy comics.
Consume,
thanks
not
for having
collect.
me on, guys. Thank you so much.
Take it
Awesome.
easy.
Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys.
Awesome. So I hope everybody enjoyed that interview. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And after reading Snake Eyes Dead Game, the first issue, I am so excited for the rest of the series and even looking into more of the G.I. Joe comic books.
I wore the right pants for this occasion.
I know you did. You came prepared.
I did.
Everybody at home, thank you so much for listening. Do share us with your friends, your family, your rivals if you're into that kind of thing. Do stop by, rate and review us wherever you listen. If you are watching on YouTube, do consider subscribing. Do like this video, share it. You know the thing. Just get it out there. Tell the world about Nerd on the Podcast.
And support a comic book store. Stay safe and stay strong for everyone out there. We're very excited to release this episode out, and we're hoping that everyone that listens can enjoy it as well.
Definitely. But yeah, that's been it. You know the drill. As always, nerd on.
Nerd on.
Ending broadcast.